Imagine the sun is going down. There is no house waiting for you, no locked door, no mattress, no electric light. And once darkness settles in, almost everything outside your fire becomes difficult to see. You still have to sleep, for hours, completely vulnerable. Cold is coming, insects are coming. The fire will eventually weaken, and depending on where and when you live, there may be predators outside that can hear you much better than you can see them. So what did humans actually do? Did everyone pile into caves? Did somebody stay awake all night? Were people sleeping directly on dirt? And before bedrooms existed, was there anything that we would recognize as a bed? Archaeology gives us a surprisingly good answer to that last question, because 200,000 years before the first house existed, someone was already making a bed. The first thing to get rid of is the image of every prehistoric human living inside a cave. Caves preserve evidence, which is why archaeologists love them. But people slept wherever they lived. Rock shelters, open camps, windbreaks of brush and hide, structures that only needed to survive tonight or a season. And that creates a problem for us. Stone survives, branches don't. Grass disappears, skins rot. Some of the most important parts of a prehistoric camp are exactly the things least likely to remain, which is why what survived in one South African cave matters so much. But sometimes the evidence survives. At Border Cave in southern Africa, researchers identified traces of grass bedding dating back around 200,000 years. Not random grass blown into a cave, deliberately arranged plant material in areas where people were living and working. Imagine what that changes. You're no longer lying directly on cold stone or packed earth. The plant layer insulates you, cushions pressure points, keeps your body slightly above the dirty floor, and gives you something that begins to look remarkably familiar: a mattress. Just not one made in a factory. Before houses, humans were already modifying the ground to make sleep more comfortable. But comfort was only half of what the grass was doing. Because if you've ever tried sleeping outside, you know the ground is alive. Ticks, fleas, mosquitoes, other crawling insects. And some prehistoric sleeping spaces show signs that people may have been actively managing them. At Border Cave, bedding sometimes sits on layers of ash. Researchers have suggested that ash may have made life harder for crawling pests. At another South African site, Sibudu Cave, the evidence becomes even more interesting. Around 77,000 years ago, people made bedding from sedges and other plants. And on top of that bedding, they placed aromatic leaves. Some of those plants contain natural chemicals with insecticidal or larvicidal properties. We cannot know exactly what the people using those plants understood chemically. They did not need to know the word insecticide. They only needed to notice, bugs don't like this plant. That is not primitive sleeping. That is environmental engineering. But it came with a maintenance problem. Because eventually, plant bedding gets filthy. People walk over it, food falls into it, ash mixes with it, insects move in. And at Sibudu, archaeologists found evidence that old bedding was burned. Beginning around 73,000 years ago, burning appears to have become part of how the living surface was maintained. Instead of scrubbing the floor, you burn the floor, then replace it. The result may have reduced old debris and pests while creating a cleaner surface for the next layer. The details changed from site to site, but the behavior tells us something important. People were not simply collapsing wherever darkness caught them. They were maintaining sleeping spaces. Then there was fire. The obvious advantage is warmth. But nighttime fire does several jobs at once. It gives light. It lets people cook after sunset. It lets them repair tools, talk, watch children, see movement near the camp. And depending on the circumstances, smoke and flame may also discourage some animals and insects. The important thing is the circle. Fire creates a tiny island where humans can continue being human after the sun disappears. Outside that circle, visibility collapses. Inside it, the day gets extended. This probably changed sleep itself, because darkness did not necessarily mean everyone goes to bed immediately. Studies of present-day small-scale societies living without electric lighting found that people often fall asleep several hours after sunset, not the moment the sun goes down. Fire gave humans something that most animals do not have, a social night. But when the fire burned low and everyone finally lay down, one question remained: who keeps watch? Here is the strange thing about sleeping as a group. People do not all sleep the same way. Children wake up, older adults wake up. Some people fall asleep early, others stay awake later. Someone gets up to tend the fire, someone hears an animal, someone needs to urinate. And the result can be something that looks almost like a natural night watch, without anyone formally assigning one. Researchers studying Hadza hunter-gatherers in Tanzania tracked nighttime activity across 20 days. Across those 20 days, there were only 18 minutes when everyone in the group was asleep at the same time. 18 minutes. Practically every moment of every night, at least one person was awake or sleeping lightly. That does not mean prehistoric humans had scheduled guards. The Hadza are modern people, not fossils from the Stone Age. But the study suggests something intriguing. If humans sleep in mixed-age groups, different body clocks naturally create periods when somebody is awake. And when sleeping makes you vulnerable, that is a useful accident. Night was still dangerous. Large carnivores shared prehistoric landscapes with humans for enormous stretches of our evolution. Lions, hyenas, leopards, wolves in some regions, other humans. And danger did not have to walk on four legs. A storm could destroy a shelter. A fire could go out. Temperatures could fall suddenly. A child could wander. But humans had one enormous advantage over an isolated sleeper: other humans. A lone animal has to protect itself. A sleeping human group can pool warmth, share shelter, keep fire alive, respond to noise, and wake each other. The safest prehistoric sleeping technology may not have been grass, or fire, or even a cave. It may have been the group. There is another modern assumption worth questioning: that without phones, clocks, and electric light, humans must have slept 10 or 12 perfect hours every night. Modern studies of communities living without electricity do not show that. Researchers studying Hadza, San, and Tsimane groups found people averaging roughly 6 to 7 hours of sleep, with frequent brief awakenings and naps when the day allowed. And their nights were not set by darkness alone. People generally did not fall asleep at sunset. Sleep began hours later, as the night grew colder. And waking often came near the coldest part of the night, just before sunrise. Without thermostats, the body experiences the night directly. Warm evening, cooling air, the coldest hours before dawn. These are modern people. We cannot paste their numbers onto someone living 20,000 years ago, but they challenge the fantasy of natural human sleep as one enormous, uninterrupted block. Human sleep appears flexible, and probably always has been. So if you walked into a prehistoric sleeping camp, what would the bed look like? There is no single answer. But in places where plant bedding survives, the basic idea is surprisingly recognizable. A prepared surface, soft vegetation, sometimes ash beneath it, fresh plant material, possibly hides on top. People sleeping close to one another, fire nearby, tools within reach. Not a bedroom, not a mattress, but also not simply dirt. Some prehistoric people were deliberately controlling softness, insulation, insects, cleanliness, and warmth. Those are exactly the problems your mattress and bedroom solve today. The materials changed, the problem didn't. And there is another part of prehistoric sleep that archaeology almost never preserves: what happened before it. Conversation, stories, arguments, children refusing to settle down, someone checking tomorrow's tools, someone feeding the fire, someone worrying about the hunt, someone lying awake while everyone else sleeps. We can recover grass, ash, charcoal, bones, stone tools, but the emotional experience of night disappears. And yet, that may be the part most familiar to us. Because sleeping is biological, but bedtime is cultural. Humans do not simply shut off. We build rituals around becoming vulnerable, and we appear to have been modifying the places where that happens for an extraordinarily long time. So how did humans sleep before houses existed? They made shelter where they could. They prepared the ground, they used plants, they managed insects, they kept fire, They slept in groups. They woke through the night, and they adapted their sleeping places to whatever environment surrounded them. 200,000 years ago, someone gathered grass, carried it into a shelter, laid it down, and made the ground a little softer before going to sleep. That tiny act feels almost invisible beside stone tools and giant animals, but it tells us something enormous. Long before humans invented bedrooms, they had already invented the idea behind one. A safe place, a soft place, a place where, for a few hours, you could close your eyes